Check.
There it is.
I don't know what's...
Okay. Well, while your mic is still working, let's do this.
Okay. We have a lot of special features.
So one thing, the first thing we do when we start this, actually, Josh is going to take it over right now.
All right, you ready?
Yeah. There we go. All right. Welcome to the Day After Podcast. By the way, my name is Sam. That's Josh, of course, my co-host here, and we'll get to this guy in a minute here. But before we get into it, I just wanted to give a bit of an official intro to the podcast here, because we may have thrown out a video already that some of y'all have already seen, and we appreciate you watching that very, very much. And we kind of, I guess, in a sense, surprised people, because a lot of people didn't really know we were doing this. So I just want to intro this podcast a little bit. So we are the Day After Podcast. We are called the Day After Podcast because you will likely see these podcasts the day after service. We intend on posting these every Monday, or as frequently as we can keep up every Monday. And our intention is to have guests on here, talk about testimonies, talk about anything that they want to talk about.
Not aliens.
Not aliens.
Oh man, that throws out everything I had right now.
Anything, of course, relevant to church and the God and the Bible, and to door directors and stuff like that. So.
Oh wow.
We have a few guests lined up. So, of course, keep posted on our future podcasts here. We wanted to do this because, a lot of people have asked us, like, when we mentioned we were going to do a podcast, like, oh, are you doing it because this other church is doing it, this other church is doing it? And yeah, that might be a little bit of the purpose, a little bit of the reason we have a bit of an inspiration now to do it. But we felt like this was the next step for our church to take. It's because we've done a lot of other things like concerts and outreaches, and we've been outreaching frantically these past few months here, and the next best thing for us to help get the word out is podcasting. Plus it helps us with our speaking. I know I like to talk, Josh likes to talk, sometimes we like to talk to each other, so
so a lot of time. So
this works out here. So again, we thank you for joining us here, and without further ado, we have our second guest of the show. He is our fearless door director, him and his wife Jessica. He is our fearless sound guy at times.
I'm not a sound guy anymore.
No, you're a sound guy.
I think you're always a sound guy.
He plays guitar, but doesn't like to admit it that he plays guitar.
So now the news is out.
Yeah.
Now you've been.
And we're gonna get to that. We will get to that. But we just wanted to introduce and thank Rudy Bonilla for joining us. So
thank you for Rudy. Having me on.
Yeah. And that is it. No, I'm kidding.
And cut. No. Well, we like Sam said, we appreciate you coming out, cutting some time in your busy schedule. So one of the first things, though, we do want from you is, because you are talking to a crowd that doesn't know you, right. We want to know your testimony, and you can jump in wherever you want, but kind of give it in a bit of a detail of how you started coming to church and when you actually got saved, and how salvation's been going thus far.
Well, okay, so when I was maybe like 8, 9, 10 years old, I first started coming to church with Robert and Mary, Santos and Mary, because my cousin Joe lived next door, but I didn't really understand anything. I just and so that got me into the door, and I started knowing, like, I don't know who, Daniel, I don't even remember what guys were there, but I remember talking to the old drummer, JD and Vincent, those guys. So but then that didn't, I'm only like 8, 9 years old. I was not trying to get saved or anything, but I remember when I first lifted my hand and got saved was when I was 15, when I just walked into church. My parents were already coming to church, and there was a bunch of young guys there. So I remember you and Josh were one of them, and a bunch of Aaron and all those guys there. And so that got me interested. There was a bunch of young people there, and but at the same time, I had a bunch of friends at school. So I did start going in a dress shirt and tie and all that, but quickly came back into the world because I went back to school, and that was more appealing to me, going out and getting high and drunk and all that stuff. So it wasn't until I was about 18, maybe a few years past 18 years old, that I actually got saved and stayed, started getting involved. That's when I got in the band, and that was also with you. And so through all that, I met my wife, my now wife, and we began to do things the right way. I remember talking to Pastor Isaac, and she talked. She asked Pastor Spacek, then I asked Pastor Spacek, and they gave us the okay. So at some point there, we got a little bit too close. Then we decided we're just gonna, just do it on our own. There was a point where it was like, okay, are we gonna say something? And it was like in the balance, like this is it. We're either gonna, because at that point Pastor Gordon had just came in, and we're like, and then we just made the wrong decision and we did it on our own. And then it wasn't even that long though, because I don't even think it was a year. It was less than a year that Pastor Gordon allowed us back in, and we've been here ever since. It was January of 2015 that we came back.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in that, there are some details that I want to ask you about, mainly on, firstly, I should say, on your early salvation, coming to church and all that stuff at 15 years old.
Okay.
So when you came to church, what was one of the biggest things that really that you wrestled with to be saved at school? Was it the idea of your friends knowing that you went to church, or was it more of the fact that you didn't want to have to listen to rules that hold you down to having fun?
I can remember just my parents talking to me about just staying saved, getting saved. They started making rules in the house, and I wasn't allowed to come home, and I wasn't allowed to I would come home drunk, I would come home high, and they started making rules. I couldn't do that. And
so just to be clear, before all this, they were all right with it.
They were okay. Yeah, I can remember being like, I don't know, 11, 12 years old. I know I was probably barely in middle school, and I would get high with the guy down the street, and I didn't know about Visine back then or anything. So my eyes were all bloodshot, and there in my parents' house, and I don't know. My parents, when they weren't saved, they would. I don't know what they were thinking, but they were okay with that. They were okay with that stuff. And so now they're saved, and now I started coming. And I can remember just watching a lot of, getting back to what you said, watching a lot of videos on YouTube about different, just questioning a lot of things. Like I knew that I knew the message that they were saying was it got me somewhere in my 15-year-old mind. What Pastor Isaac was preaching, it made, I wanted like a peace, and I'd see people and they were lifting their hands and worshiping, and I didn't totally get it, but just the friends. It really was the people that I hung out with, and they weren't necessarily people that were like, don't go to church because they don't understand it. We're all religious. Everyone's religious.
Yeah, like, oh, yeah, you're going, man, that's great.
Yeah. So it really was just the drive to want to just be with my school friends and just knowing that there was like a clear difference in them and the guys at church, it just didn't match up with me. And I knew as I continued to hang out with my school guys at school, after school, before school, at the weekends, it just didn't feel right hanging out with guys who were in ministry and all that stuff. It just didn't connect.
So that's kind of the place where a lot of people, when they first start coming to church, they find themselves drawn back to their old life. And instead of turning away from that life, they're like, oh, I don't want to be a hypocrite, right? That's always the idea that comes about inside someone's mind. That's how it sounded like to me. You're like, oh, I'm hanging around with all these Christians, but I'm not being a Christian.
Right, and I mean, I don't know if hypocrite, because I'm 15 years old. I don't know how, because I know I stayed a little while. It was more like I like them more than I like them. Yeah, like you know what I mean? Because the guys at school were guys that I grew up with.
Yeah.
In elementary and middle school, now in high school. The message of what was being preached got me. But the fact that I was still tied so closely to these group of friends that I grew up with, it was just like, that just was too much. I want to hang out with y'all. And all the time I spent with them, there was no time for church guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And did you ever attempt to inviting your friends and their experience for here?
Yeah,
the church?
I can remember that two of them came and got saved, and that was in the early, time, and when I was 15, and as me and Jessica came back. And as now we're older now, a little older, and we're here in church, they remembered and they came back, even when Pastor Gordon was here, and they didn't really make it or last, but they knew where to find me in a way.
No, that's good. That's interesting. So now, you backslid. What brought you back at 18?
What brought me back at 18 is I was very, very, there was always this fear of dying. There was a fear of this anxiety. And I mean, that came from somewhere. I believe it's something inherited because I see it in my family. And I had that growing up. Even as a 15-year-old, there was things that would just go through my mind and would just really mess with me. And when I heard that stuff preached, that was that was the answer to me. But there was so much still that pulled me back.
Yeah, you kind of, because you got an enlightenment, you searched for it, like you said before, you went to YouTube, and that's kind of something that maybe had drawn you out, because you're like, well, there's so many different answers to these same questions.
Right. I remember my parents saying the end times and the signs and the wars and rumors of wars, and I would be like, there's always been wars, and I always had something to say because I watched it somewhere or somebody, I'm hearing these things, and it's like I always had something to say to them.
So as a note to it, we are on YouTube right now, but YouTube is not a good place to find out doctrine.
Right. It's a horrible place.
Horrible place to spend all your time when you could be reading your Bible. And so now you got saved at 18. Is that where you went back? Did you realize oh, I can't go back to YouTube. I can't figure. I need to read the Bible, or I need to inject myself in that way.
I think by 18, after high school, because I wasn't around that time, I think it was just over with high school, because I didn't graduate. I dropped out. I had already begun to separate just through the process of getting a job and stuff. I separated from those guys. And so I'm still battling the same things though. So now they're not there, like they were in school. And so it was very easy now to just come in and actually let God, speak to me. Because when I went home, it's not like I had those guys that, hey, what's up? Because just through school ending and all that, everyone just separated. Yeah. And so I got to get closer to the guys at church because there was that opening now.
Yeah. And I want to say this for all teenagers if you are watching this and you're a teenager and maybe you have the same struggle where you're like, oh, well, what do my friends think? Like Rudy said, friends don't care. Like they're like, oh, cool, good for you. Like they really get like that.
Yeah, they don't understand.
No, they're like, if that's what you want to do right now, go for it. But the thing is, though, is that when as for Rudy, saw it living life, everybody just kind of dispersed, right?
Right.
Some people may still hang out with each other. Some people may, a lot of times their family is one of those. That's what I always saw. Guys in high school, middle school, they all stayed together because they were family. But that's the reality, is that those people aren't going to be there, in 2 years after high school.
Right.
Y'all aren't, unless y'all really make a pact to like follow each other. Life just leads you in different directions. So your choices now should not be dictated by who you hang out with now. Like you should make that solid decision because your church is always going to be here. Your church is always where if you're in a church right now and you're playing the game, or you're not sure if you want to stick it out after you get to move out of your parents' house. The thing is that the church is going to be the family that you always have. Like you won't see the people in high school again, but you'll see the people at church every weekend and every Wednesday. So that's the thing, is that making your choices off of those ideas of like, okay, these people aren't going to be with me in my hard times. I can trust that the people at church will be. And that's one of the things that, that's what you kind of came to realize.
Yeah, just as, like I said, as I came back and those church people, the worldly people and those guys at school, as they went away, and now I'm there, 18 years old, even though, like, I know we'll probably get more into it, as me and my wife backslid, now we came back, those guys are still there. You know what I mean? Like, through all that time, even from being 15 to now I'm 29, those same guys are still there. From church guys.
That's good.
Yeah. I want to jump in here, Josh. Let me speak a little bit. It's been like 20 minutes. No, I'm kidding. Am I loud now?
He's not kidding.
Actually, they're just simple questions. Josh and I had a conversation a few weeks back. It may or may not get posted. We'll see. But it's a conversation on fear. And one of the things you brought, of course, coming into the church, and then you mentioned speaking in tongues. So one of the things we talked about was like when you come into a church and you see all that, like, did that scare you, or did that freak you out? Anything like that?
Yeah, it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when I first heard, but you see, speaking in tongues was such it's a portion of what we do and the amount of time we're here. Yeah. So the preaching and the guys that, the people there, that, speaking in tongues was weird to me, but really everything else like overrode that, even though I didn't understand it. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it wasn't something that I personally felt like, because I'm not like 30 years old with my own theology. I'm just like, I'm a young kid. I'm just like, if this is what church people do this. Because my parents didn't go to church. I never went to church until my parents got saved. We never went to a Catholic church or anything, anything. So that was my first experience with church, was this church.
Now, I've been blessed enough to have the same pastor as I've been in this church for the full 6 years plus that I've been coming here. And you mentioned that you had Pastor Isaac before, and then Pastor Gordon came in. So what was it like? What was your impression of Pastor Gordon without even knowing him as a pastor? You didn't even know him at first, right?
Well, I went to boot camp 1 year in 2005. Yeah. And I knew Pastor Gordon was the big black DI that yelled louder than everyone else. That's how I knew him. That's how I had Pastor Chris Kelly, and you know, whatever, it doesn't matter now, but he gave us a lot of breaks, and we stood in the shade for a while, and you know, and I don't know, but then when I looked at the other platoon, I was like, oh man, you know, thank God I'm not in there. But that's probably why I didn't stay saved, or so, you know, whatever. But really, that's the only kind of I just knew him from that one time in boot camp. That's D.I. Gordon, and I never knew him in the mother church or anything. So when he came and he took over, what I saw from him before we left, he was. He just seemed like a very nice guy. He came to the guy's home. He did like a little. He made like not him, but he was there when we made like pizzas and stuff, and he was just there talking and everything. And you know, he just seemed like a really good person. You know, when the little time that I knew him.
Yeah.
So now, when you decided to date your wife, right? Y'all had the idea like, oh, we're gonna do this right. We wanna. So in that, like, how did y'all even get interested into each other? How did you know about her? Or what was the story there for between y'all two?
So when I started doing concerts, and we were in a band, right? And we had that building on Pleasanton.
Yeah. That
separate building we do it in. So as we started doing those concerts, she started coming out with, I think, Stephanie and stuff. And just as her coming around, I you know, that's when I started noticing her. And that's when I started asking, and you know, what's her name. I was telling Aaron, because Aaron and Steph were like there, and that's Stephanie's friend. I got the inside, like, who is that, and you know, and all that stuff. So as she started coming to the concerts, then that's when you know, started getting interested and all that.
So when was the first time you talked to her then?
I remember the first time I talked to her, it was at a fellowship at Annie's house after a conference, and I can remember because I don't know who I was talking to, but they were.
I don't care.
Yeah, but they were telling the whole thing with me is I'm not really a big social person to begin with. I have become that. I'm you know, doing that now. But when they said Annie used to have that 2-story house, Jessica went upstairs. And they told me, when she comes down the stairs, that's your chance to meet her there, you know, whatever. You don't got to go to a group of people. It's just going to be her, whatever. And so I can remember, like, oh my gosh, like, okay, like, when is it going to happen? It's like, you know, and I remember standing in Annie's, the back living room, and just kind of like waiting there, like, I'm just like, okay. And then I can, you know, hear people start to come down. And then I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I'm starting to, like, you know, what do I say? What do I do? Like, and I'm having second thoughts. Like, do I turn around? Do I just act like I'm, like, looking at the pillows or something? Or what do I do? And so as she walks down, I don't even remember. She might remember, but I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something dumb, you know, that came out like, you know, like stuttering and, hi. I'm Rudy, you know, something weird like that. But I remember after that all, you know, the awkwardness of me, you know, beginning that conversation. I remember sitting with in the same room, and there was other ladies there, and we were just talking about the concert and being in the band and conference and that was the very first time I spoke to her, and I was extremely nervous.
Yeah. Can only imagine.
Yeah.
And at that moment, you had an ambition to be able to court her, or you were just wanting to get to know her?
No, I saw her, right, and just something about her, besides the fact that she's very beautiful, in my mind, I had said, I'm going to marry her. And I'm not like that. I'm not like, that's just not like me. But in my mind, I was like, I'm going to marry her.
Wow.
Like when we started talking, when I asked Pastor Isaac, I already knew this kid's talking out of the way. Like, I want to marry her. That's what I already knew.
And
So,
she was all for it.
Did you ever tell her that?
Yeah.
did I ever tell her that? I don't know if that ever came out. That I want to marry you, in the talking part. But we did begin to date, and during that dating time, just kind of jumping a little bit forward, during that dating time, we began to go out with people, but people that we shouldn't have gone out with.
Okay.
Who kind of left us to ourselves, and nothing happened, the first time or the second, but just the fact that we were too close, and the opportunity came again and again, and that's when we begin to like our hands touched and something, and the people that we were with, they were maybe assuming that stuff doesn't happen, and I'm over here just like, that's good y'all are over there, because in my mind it was like,
Hey, you're like, we're married.
yeah.
In your mind, you're like, we're married. I want to marry her.
Yeah.
So we're married. Maybe that's how it happens, right?
Yeah.
But so okay, so she was, in essence, you two had found each other to, y'all both had kind of agreed to the fact that, hey, look, we're both, it's not just a fling, or what, do you know what, in the sense of when y'all left, she understood the repercussions and everything.
As of repercussions of what?
As of like, hey, you can't come back to church.
Oh yeah, she was fully aware of that.
Okay.
I remember talking to her and being the one that said, I'm going to, I want to tell them. I want to tell Pastor and all that. And in her mind, she had just done something very wrong, and it's like, she can't face her pastor. And she was like, I'm sorry, I can't go back. And so there was that key moment in my life where it's like, looking back, it's like, if I would have stayed, maybe she would have came, but in my mind, it was like, I'm not going to lose her.
Right.
And that's why when I left, and when we left together, all through that beginning of us being together after backsliding, her fear was kind of, did this guy just want one thing? And is he going to leave me now and all this stuff? But my mind never changed. Like, I wanted to marry you, and you're the one I'm going to be with, even as I was not saved. That never changed.
Okay, just real quick, exception to the rule, okay? This is not the way you should do it.
Yeah, exactly. Because we might get into that later. I don't know what other questions y'all have.
Well, I'm because your testimony is like really vague. Like, I got saved, and I messed up, and now I'm saved, and here we are doing a podcast. It's like, so I want to get a little bit of the details so people understand your actual walk but
so let me say something that's very key to somebody who is maybe battling this or maybe contemplating finding someone outside of church. If you're in church and you want to be saved, and one thing that I learned is if that person, if you do not let that God work in that person, I guess I'm speaking to women, to girls, talking about guys. If you don't let that guy, if you don't see him involved, and it's not only involved, it's just, if you don't let God work in him, then he will not be able to support you spiritually. He may be able to support you financially, but there's gonna come a point when all the honeymoon thing ends, and when it's time for him to care for your spiritual needs, that's gonna be the breaking point. And a lot of people that don't come back because they rushed it and they didn't let God work in this guy. And by the grace of God, we made it back. It's not like it was easy.
Yeah.
It was extremely difficult.
Yep.
Yeah, bow your heads, close your eyes. Man.
Yeah.
You're a pastor, man.
So, okay, cool. We got that out of the way. I just wanted to make sure we have that disclaimer.
Yeah. Maybe you should cut that part out, put it in the beginning and end it. Yeah.
So, okay. So now I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want you to give us your side of how it felt to leave and the weight that fell on your shoulders with this girl. Obviously, Jessica, but I'm just
yeah. So with me when I left, remember, there was fear and anxiety. That was a part of who I was, and so we would be in our apartment, and she would be asleep, and I would be like pacing back and forth. Not on I didn't do drugs. I mean, weed is a drug, right? So, yeah. So we didn't do hard drugs, unless people, call weed a hard drug. Utah doesn't, but or Oregon, one of them legalized it all. So
your in-laws, man, California.
Yeah, they don't consider it either. They see it all the time. So. The thing was, it came out, it's lust, right? So boom, we go, we try to, we get an apartment, everything, and I'm okay. I'm sorry, I'm not okay. She's okay. She's like nothing. Like she's totally embracing this lifestyle of, just going to work, and then we go to the bars and we go to clubs and all that. And but me, in my mind, I knew, because I said it wasn't even a year. In my mind, the whole time, I'm like, in order for this to work out, because there's arguing now, there's all these things, all these issues are coming out. There's so many. Now the real us, because we're living together, now the real us is coming out inside of a home. And so I knew in my mind, I gotta get back to church. We gotta get back to church. And the struggle now was I pulled her out. Mm-hmm. And so now it's like it's not just snap your fingers, let's get saved, and everything's gonna do. There was so much, and my whole objective shortly after we left was that I need to get back to church, and we need to get back to church because God is because the realization of everything that happened, seeing the way we were fighting and seeing just the issues that were coming out that were hidden, it's like, you know what, man, we need to make it right.
So you're delaying the inevitable, you would say? Inevitably coming back to church. Like you knew you had to come back.
I knew I had. And there was no doubt I was gonna come back. I remember right at the point where we came back was we were arguing, and we were arguing so bad. It was like one of our worst arguments. And I just remember just all the crazy things that happened that night. And I just remember that. I believe it was a Friday or Saturday, and just saying, Sunday, I'm going to go to church, and that's where I'm going to be. I don't know, because it had just hit a breaking point. Yeah. And she didn't go for that week, because I ended up going Sunday. The following Sunday, she ended up going, and then we started working things out.
That's awesome.
I do want to mention this, because you mentioned arguments, and this is something we talked about with Mark as well. And just because you're saved doesn't mean you don't have arguments anymore. Like you still, there's still some quarrels here and there, right?
Well, you're everyone has a will. Yeah. You know what I mean? Everyone has their own pool on what they think is right and what they consider is important and priorities and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, on the smallest thing to the biggest thing, there's going to be arguments over even the tiniest thing. Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah.
Arguments help you. I know I'm going on, but
go ahead.
It's your time.
If the one, something that's going to really help guys. I mean, it's going to help women too, girls too, but what's going to help guys is that you have to learn how to argue. And realizing what I had to realize was that the role of a man in a marriage and the role of a woman in a marriage, my role was not to be back and forth with my emotions, and that was very, very difficult because growing up, my father and mother would argue like crazy, and they'd be yelling at each other, and I can clearly remember sleeping in the living room with my dad nights that they were arguing, and even to the point where he wanted to leave and all this stuff. So I grew up with that's how they people argued, and so as that began to come out in our own life, Pastor Gordon was there from the very beginning, and he began to just speak things to us and talk to me one-on-one. And as I applied those, like your feelings don't matter, that kind of thing. And that's something very important that men have to realize in a marriage is I mean, you got to understand, yes, she's got to consider some things, but your feelings don't matter.
Now, I do want to be clear. We came into this podcast not really like with an intention to talk about certain things, but it seems like marriage has come out a lot in this podcast, taking up a majority. And I strongly believe that God put this in this podcast for a reason. There's a lot of people that need to hear this in our church right now, because Pastor says like people are getting married this year. Yeah. And people need to know that it's normal. These things are normal. These things happen.
Right.
So your words and your advice is definitely helping somebody out here or up here or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the main thing, is that even if you don't go to our church, if you're from another church, or maybe you're considering coming to church and you want to look at your spouse as a devil because y'all argue, we have to realize that, we're not perfect either. Like, I know that's the one thing I have to remind myself. Like, if I get into an argument with my wife, I have to remember I'm not perfect. She may be doing something I don't like, but I know I do more things that she doesn't like than she does that I don't. But yeah, for sure. And especially, Valentine's Day is right around, it's just passed. So
I've had the urge to ask my wife what is the thing I do most that annoys her.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I'm a little scared.
Well, I'm skittish on that one. She's like breathing. No.
How much time do you have?
But it's true though, yeah. And that's what like you said, Pastor Gordon was able to talk to y'all. So now my first question is on this subject is, when did you? Oh. What were you saying? No. Oh, okay. No. When did you first talk to Pastor Gordon about coming back? Like, did it happen right after y'all left, or did you wait a long time before you even talked to him?
It was months. I don't know the exact times, but I know that it was a few months, 3 months, something like that. And I reached out to him, and his thing was, you gotta separate. And okay, so it was okay. So let me get it. What he wanted us to do was get married, right? And if we were going to do it the right way, he wanted us to do it the right way, but we didn't want to do it. So what people don't realize, I don't know if people realize in church, we didn't get married in church. Not even a Jewish people wedding or Saturday or in the office in the weekday. Nothing. We got married at the courthouse. Because we were at the point where it's like we want to make it right as soon as possible, and so we did that. And then Pastor Gordon, he said, well, why don't you go to this church for a little while, and so we went to this church, and then the pastor there started preaching this once saved always saved kind of sermon. And I text Pastor Gordon, hey, can I talk to you? And I remember I was at HEB, me and Jessica were at HEB, and I called him and said, man, this guy's preaching some weird stuff, all this stuff. And he goes, oh, you know what, you can come back in 2 weeks. And then I was like, boom, just like, oh, okay, and what Pastor Gordon talked to me and what he said was like, what am I going to do, kick you out? You left. You know what I mean? Like, you can come back. And so from the very beginning when we came back, even before we came into church, he was already, when we got married, he began, thinking back, because it was like 7 years ago or something, he was even there before we got married. He visited us, and I remember dealing with us on things, and so he's been there the whole way. Even before marriage.
And the reason why he came out to you was because you were going out to him first, right?
Yeah, I reached out to him, but you got to understand, like, I didn't have a relationship with Pastor Isaac. I think I sat and ate with him once or twice with Daniel, but there was no relationship at all. So it wasn't Pastor Gordon being there. It was just different. And him and Liz, because Liz played a huge role in all this stuff. And them being there was just like, and like I said, I was kind of very anti, social, like naturally. So when people start to get close like that, it's weird to me. Like I'm just on the offset, like guys that I worked at companies where the employers try to make it like this is like a family, and it's just so weird to me. Like everything, whenever people got close to me, it was just like, no, like you don't need to be that close to me, and not because I was like hurt or anything. It's just that was just weird to me. I don't know. But so when he did that, we began to open up, and that began to lay the road out for our marriage, repairing it.
Yeah. And another big disclaimer too, don't think that leaving the church and getting married is an automatic in. Because like he said, like you mentioned before, it's a major struggle to even come back. It's a major struggle when you are back. It's a major struggle with all those things. So this is a testimony right now. You're seeing a man at the end of everything that he had to go through to be where he is now. Don't think that because he went through it, you can go through it, because there's no guarantee that you going through it doesn't mean you don't die in your sin. That's a big right. Caveat. So
what it's like Pastor preaches, and I know that most people don't come back. The majority of people don't come back. And if people are thinking, they can beat the odds, you're most likely not going to make it. Mm-hmm. If you die, or even if you don't die, most likely you're not going to make it. I can remember so many times saved, coming back and just yelling, because me and Jessica are going through so much stuff, just yelling and just saying, God, I don't want to go to church. I don't want to. I don't want to be with her. And she's saying the same thing. She don't want to be with me. And just so full of anger and frustration, and just telling God, I don't want to be in church. I don't want to be saved. I don't want none of this. And there was something, I don't know what it is, by the grace of God, man, something that was in me that I come to realize now. And I don't know if there's a scripture on it or what, but God kept me. And I don't know, I guess I don't know why, but there's a purpose. But just for some reason, there are so many times where we could have separated. So many times where it was just enough, that's it. And there was something in me that was just straight from God, that would not let me leave. Just would not.
So you now are here. You have 2 boys. So did you ever see yourself as a parent?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you could talk about it, but when the child is there, I mean, you want to say it changes you, but really there's a lot of parents where they don't change. So, but it's in front of you, the reason to change every day, right? So,
Yeah.
it's just so, it really shakes you up it shook me up on the inside, because I understand that a lot of the things that I did made them a candidate to go through those very same things, and just the fact that like I said, in me there was something that wouldn't leave church. That doesn't mean that that's going to be in them.
Mm-hmm.
So my prayer and my hope is that through an example at home, and through just the willingness to say, man, God, throw it all, my job is treating me very good, and I'll leave it tomorrow if pastor tells me to go somewhere. And I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it because inside of me, I want to see people get saved. There's a desire to be a pastor in me, a missionary, really. But
Where do you want to go?
yeah, that's something else. I don't know. I've never.
Marked throughout Egypt last time.
Right.
So.
but you know what? Just them being there, that serving God is just, that's gonna be their life. They're gonna they're gonna grow up. They're gonna face a lot of the same things that I faced in their minds. But the hope is that as the exampleship is there, that they'll get it, and there'll be that lifeline there.
Oh yeah, so
Well, I was gonna ask you on where was the point that you can look back to and be like, oh man, life has gotten so tremendously better in your marriage. Obviously, you have children, so like all those things that happen, that have happened in your life. Where would it be that you can remember? Hey, man, like your wife is following you now. In the sense of like she's coming to church, she's serving God for herself. You are serving God for yourself.
So that's a very difficult question, because she was that way because of me. So the question really is, when did I start taking God serious? And I mean, when I began to I would say, because I can kind of pinpoint it around the time I was going to that welding school. Right when I quit that welding school, my wife was in the hospital. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. They took tests and they transferred her to a different hospital, and she was in there. She couldn't stay awake. She was just awake for a few minutes, then she'd go to sleep for hours and hours and hours, and they were running all kinds of tests. And I remember I'm saying, like, I'm going to this welding school, but I'm with my wife. So I'm working during the day, then after work I go to the welding school, so I'm also missing Wednesday church. And so I'm missing school to be with my wife. When she is conscious, I'm there. And I remember the incredible strain and toll it was taking on her from me being gone all day, working a full job, and then being gone, for hours and hours. I got out like at 10 or 11 at night. And when she's going through all this, they're calling me from the school and they're saying, you're missing too many days in a row. This is exceeding. I think it was over a week total at that time. And in that, they were calling me. And I remember talking to Pastor Gordon and him saying, that you gotta choose. You gotta choose. What's your choice? And so my thing was, if I don't get my certificate, if I don't get my certification, if I don't get this and that, how am I going to make it? How am I going to get a job? And so I had to make the choice. I told the school I'm not going back. I can't go back. And so shortly after I quit the school, well, right there, during that week, I quit that school. I told them I was going to go back. She got better. And the doctors ran every single disease, cancer. They were going into rare. They were like, man, we don't even know if this is not even really a possibility, but we're just running it.
Yeah.
And she got better. And it really was at that point where, because at school I still had time to do, I think I had months still to finish it. And I said, you know what, I'm choosing God and choosing to be at home with my wife. And at that point, I got a job. I got a good job. And I met a guy that I would work with. And that guy ended up just working with him, talking to him. I wasn't working good enough for this job. So they said, you know what, your probation's over. We're going to give you 3 weeks before we let you go. And so that was very good. They gave me 3 weeks. And I remember that guy I met there, he said, hey, well, I used to work at this one job. It sucks. You're not really going to like it, but it's a job, welding. And I'm like, oh, man, really? And he's describing the job to me. I'm like, I got 3 weeks. I don't got a choice, right? And so I end up getting this job that I'm at now. And almost in a very short amount of time, got promoted, got a raise. They've helped me so much. They've gone above and beyond for me, and all that without all the certifications, without all the hours I needed, and at that moment, in that time, when my wife got sick, things changed. I didn't say everything changed. I wasn't, Mr. Faithful, but at that point, things started to be different. Now I was at home all the time, and me and Jessica were able to work things out, do that.
Good. Now we got a full picture, at least. Even maybe not a full picture, but at least we got more of the colors filled in than we did before. All right. So now, Sam.
When of course, when you started coming back to church, you chose. It was your choice, right? Everyone has their own choice to do it. Like Pastor talked about just a few days ago, like he chooses to be here. Like he could choose to leave if he wanted to, but you chose to come. Did you have any influences? Like was your dad like kind of pushing you in your mind, or like anybody else
to come to church?
Yeah.
No, there was
or anybody like maybe you looked up to.
No. Well, there's people that are good examples, but you get to understand everything that was going on in my marriage. That gotta understand, I didn't care what people thought.
Yeah.
I just wanted God to help me, and I knew as soon as I got to church, as soon as I could raise my hand and come to, I knew that at that point God was going to help me. There was and I didn't care about what anybody thought. I didn't care about. It was very embarrassing leaving, and you were supposed to be this example, and now I didn't care about what anybody thought. Mm-hmm. I just knew that I desperately needed God to help me and my wife.
Yeah. Now your wife, her parents are Jesse Gian and Maria. That's right. That's what I thought too. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to say the wrong name. And they're in Stockton, California. So when they were sent out, were there any? Of course you're gonna miss people, right? Were there bittersweet feelings, like from Jessica or even from you? Like how close were you to them when they?
I gained a very good relationship with them because their house was the house that everybody went to. Yeah. In the church, but also with just her sisters, and everyone went to their house. Mm-hmm. And as me and Jessica were newly married, were coming to church now. We went there almost every other day to their house. So to see them leave, for Jessica, it was extremely difficult. It was very, very hard because nobody knew until that last day, the last minute.
Yeah.
And for me, it was difficult because I began to be with them a lot. And but just me and Jessica just know that's we've come to understand that's what God does. It's His people.
It's like Crystal's uncle, Pastor Fernando, going to Bulgaria, and that was a big surprise. But everyone's excited and happy about it.
Right.
So of course we know that's where he has to go. So, but we do hope to get one of the California pastors on here someday, even if by Zoom, right, to ask them personally questions like things like this. But did he mention any difficulty in pastoring there, like with the pandemic, like the closures and stuff like that?
No, what you see, Jesse is like extremely radical guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's out there. You can't even be street preaching. He's out there street preaching.
Oh wow.
You know what I mean? You
was he in the fires?
Yeah, but I mean, they are just a very, very faithful, very faithful couple, and Jesse, he's a guy that it's all God. Like, he doesn't take any credit for the things that he does or has, and he really difficulty wise, I don't know, but I just know by the type of person he is, he can get, he knows where to go.
Now I want to just this would be like a complete left turn here, but I just kind of want to tell a little bit of a story. So we haven't known each other as long as you've known Josh,
Right.
but I've known you pretty much as long as I've been here. And I remember there was a time where I sent Pastor some music that I wrote, some original music that I wrote. And then he never gives me feedback. He didn't say anything. He was just like, okay, you're going to start a band. So I remember walking into Pastor's office with my wife, and Rudy and Jessica Bonilla were in the office and said, poof, y'all are a band. Y'all are playing this Saturday.
Who's this guy?
Yeah. I didn't even know what was... Jessica was about to blow. She was pregnant, like super pregnant.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, she was super. Yeah. And my idea was like, what do I'm gonna put her on bass, and I was like, she's gonna play bass like this. Like, I didn't know where. Yeah, I didn't know who I was gonna put where.
But she was playing. I remember her playing the keyboard. And her was super pregnant.
Yeah. So that's what I ended up. I came to my senses. I was like, no, she can't play bass because she'll be out here. So she got on the keyboard. So we created a band in the span of 2 days.
Yeah.
Had to learn 2 songs for a concert. I just thought it was just a funny story to share because.
Yeah, and I liked being in the band,
mm-hmm.
but. I'm not the type of person that will put like, oh, let's start a band and I'm gonna pick, So when Pastor did that, it was very good, and you write music and you write everyone's part. All I had to do was read the notes and so.
I will admit, at the time, as a newly converted person, like I just came in and I grew up in a professional musician background. I was a little bit annoyed.
Yeah.
I was like, "Who are you putting me with, Pastor?
Where these pregnant lady? What kind of church is this?"
But I did learn a lot in that. So it does
What'd
teach.
You learn?
Well, it teaches you to work with people and
yeah.
Simplify if need be, and it was a good experience. Like, it was cool having you on the band. Y'all were always very very open to suggestions and open to to the parts and stuff. So that was cool. When are you gonna start playing again? I'm asking now, so they see.
He's all like, when I get to now.
Yeah.
He's gonna be the only guy in his church.
You gotta practice.
Yeah. One day. I have a guitar, I just need to play it, so.
You have an amp too.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got all the components.
You're all convicting me right now. Yeah. All right, tonight I'm gonna practice. No, Pastor's gonna keep me to that.
Oh,
hey, I said something last time too, and I feel like he's gonna keep me to that too. So, unless he doesn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, all right, now we're in the nitty gritty, as they like to say. All right.
This is where the lights dim and the red spots on it.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay, so conference 2019. Pastor comes to you. What's the conversation?
So, how do I say? In my mind, I already, Pastor didn't say anything.
2019?
Wasn't it?
2020.
2020 was last year, right?
Last year. So was it 2019?
It was 2019, wasn't it? Because we didn't have conference 2020.
Well, I don't know. Maybe not knowing what you're talking about then.
Wait, now
Was
now
it?
you got me
Because it wasn't.
confused.
Was it Justice Lexo?
When he became door director?
Yeah.
It's
Golly.
2020.
See?
Sheesh.
I just heard
I'll
it.
tell you
in
right
one
now,
ear.
Pandemic
October.
threw you off.
Man,
I was like, man, I've been a
2020
director a long
was
time.
2020 was long.
2020 was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like now. Golly, I thought it was 2019, and we just did nothing for.
I paused.
I
but was
literally
like, man, maybe he's
erased.
right. I don't know.
I erased 2020 from my mind. I said 2020 was a wash. It was 2019, 2021. That's how life goes. What happened in 2020? Nobody knows.
You said we didn't have conference. I was like, there was a lot of people at conference.
That's right. No, it was
when we
January
all got
conference that
COVID.
we didn't have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So October
October
2020.
2020. There you go.
Pastor comes to you.
October
Well, he's gonna cut that out.
2019, That was a whole
I'll think
different.
about it.
Yeah.
October 2019 was a whole different conversation with Pastor. So I won't say that one, but October 2020.
That's the one.
That's the
Let's talk
one.
about that.
Don't
Okay, let's get into that
Don't
one.
even go to 2018 because it gets worse.
I'm teary-eyed, man.
Oh my gosh.
Don't cry. I cried. You don't have to cry. I'm just kidding.
Okay,
So,
2020. There you go. That's the one.
There's a lot to this, and I'm gonna shorten it. In my mind, I was thinking to myself, if he tells us to get sent out, we're gonna do it. You know, little did I know, and I'm kind of cutting the conversation. I'll come right back to it. Little did I know that how unprepared I was. You know, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, pioneer and but just doing stuff here, having to write a sermon. I didn't even have a sermon ready. And I'm like talking about getting sent out, and even so we get to conference, and I think it was Friday night. He pulled me. Yeah, it was Friday night. He pulled me in one of those rooms. I don't even know what they use that room for. It looked like it was for kids, but he pulled me in that.
Yeah.
He put me in that room. Me and Jessica. Well, he first says, "Get your wife," and find your wife. And so I'm like, "Oh, what's he gonna say?" And so I find her, and we go in that room, and there's a chair, and then 2 chairs. I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And so he just says, "What do you think about becoming door director?" And that never crossed my mind because we don't have a door director here.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Oh yeah, we have door directors here." So.
You're like, Pastor, I think I could just go in.
Right,
You want me to
just
take over
say-
somewhere? Like, that's.
Just, put me on the east side or something, But he asked me that, and I was all for it. At that point, in conference, I mean, there's just more and more of me wanting more and more of God and more of what God wants for me. And I never even considered door director. I wasn't even thinking about it. But when he said it, it was like, yeah, yes, and it was. And then when we left, and we went to the service and all that, and then when we were driving home, we were like, wow, that was really good. Like we have so much time. Well, we have time to learn. Running things and all that. So. It caught me very off guard because when it was Friday, and you just told me don't touch it, don't fiddle with anything. So Josh has rules before you come up here. He interrogates you, and that you better not touch anything because it will come out. I think
That was me.
I think he's a perfectionist. He told me to read a script, but I'm not gonna read that. It doesn't make any sense why he would tell me that. So, anyways, back to my story. What was I saying?
Baby,
Someone keeps calling me. Oh.
that's your wife. Unless your
can't have-
baby's really calling you.
Well, there's a picture of her, Taylor. Let me do one of these quick messages that I don't ever do.
Ooh.
Sorry, can't talk right now. When I walked in here, what time was it?
Live and raw, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I did it again. Sorry,
great.
Josh.
Oh.
It's all good.
When I know we're talking something about being door director.
Yes, you were saying that you didn't even cross your mind.
Yeah, and then just everything that I wasn't door director when we did NP9.
No.
No, okay,
No.
so
No, it was like 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
yeah,
conference.
so everything, just running service. Even when pastor says he's not going to be here at all, just make sure everything's here and everything's set up. I had no idea. I had no idea how unprepared I was, and so I think it's very. And I understand guys go out all the time, but I think, man, it's very helpful to be a door director before, you get sent out.
So you can do all the door director duties, but you get nervous during song service.
Oh yeah, that's something that I've mentioned to more people than you. But there's something about song service, man. I just want to do a good job, and the bar is set so high because Aaron seems like an angel. So it's like, I don't have that angelic voice, so, I mean, like I was saying, Sam, like even when Pastor tells me to preach, I'm more nervous doing song service than having to preach. So, and not that I'm not nervous preaching, but something about song service, yeah, and that's why I do sound. Because
I thought you said you weren't a sound guy.
Well, I do it.
He's not always back there.
I think you're always a sound guy once you be a sound guy, because now I notice everything. When people don't, I'm telling Mark, man, this, that, and Mark says, it sounds fine. I'm like, no, it doesn't.
So shall we jump to October 2021?
I don't know, it's not there yet.
Well, it sounds like you were prepared October 2020.
Right, and so my thing is I don't have a place.
Yeah.
Well,
we're doing a lot of East Side outreaches.
Right, and one of the things that I've heard the East Side is called, something they called Austin too, was like a pastor killer, because so many guys go in and nothing ever establishes there. So I would understand going up into this point with my life, my marriage, my kids, it's really all God, man. I don't know what to say. If there's anything that is good in me or in my family, it's all because God did it. And so if I go out, I know how the kind of person I am, and if there's gonna be revival, it's gonna be God. God did it.
So, with that being said, you made mention your greatest aspirations would, aside from making it to heaven, would be a missionary.
Yeah, that's something that when I was a teenager, something that was put on me by God, because no one ever asked me to do anything. But I don't even know if I saw something or if it was a sermon, I don't remember. But I remember when me and Jessica started talking, I told her the same thing. I feel like I'm called to be a missionary. And that's something that's never left me. Yeah, I don't have a place or an area. So to me, I really, really like helping people who don't have everything. I don't know the way to put it. But when I see people like, those give, 15 cents a day. Like, I'm not gonna give to that, but there's something about watching that's like, man,
Stirs you.
Really gotta understand people are suffering out there, and the money ain't gonna help them. You know what I mean?
That's right.
I mean, that it will temporarily, but we're, we're talking about eternity, so,
So with your family, have you ever, so Jessica knows, right? She understands that. Have you ever heard kind of like a hesitancy in her? Well, I don't want you to speak for her, but I want you to like.
She keeps calling me. I'm going to put her on speaker.
I don't want you to speak for her, but I do want you to give us like, if you were to bring up like if Pastor were to say, hey, China's opening up again, y'all need to go. How do you feel like with your children going and faring over there? What would it, do you see it as a...
I'm open to anywhere because, I wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for me coming into this church and having an example like Pastor Gordon. And Pastor Gordon's not telling you that this is, Gordon counseling, it's like, it's God.
Yeah.
And he tells you things that are helpful, but ultimately one of the things he told me in the very beginning why he didn't answer a lot of my calls and why he wouldn't respond is because I don't want you to be pastor dependent. I want you to be God dependent, And so, anywhere, anything that comes to my mind, I will say yes, because I can't even put into words how I shouldn't have anything. And so it's all, how can I withhold my life or my family when I shouldn't even have them to begin with?
Right.
So that's that.
Yeah, that's a really good answer.
I
think that's what I think we squeezed all the juice out of this orange.
So we are, before we end, we are at the part of our show, and we're going to make this probably a frequent thing where we give you the opportunity to say any last words you would like to say, words of encouragement, anything like that.
I agree.
Okay, well, something I guess on the spot, encouraging is the key to you changing is going to be coming to church. And if you think that maybe that you can do it on your own, or because there's other people listening that are maybe not, maybe they don't come to church or in and out of church. Yeah. I'm telling you, the one thing that helped me, that will help you, is faithfully coming to church and understanding that that the role of a pastor and everything involved with church is extremely critical. And if we don't take that serious, if we just come to church as, I don't know if this is encouraging, but if we just come to church and just if it's a list, something we do, you're never going to change. And if you really want God to get involved in your life, you have to open yourself up to the authority, to the people, to the worship. And there's people that they hit a point in life, in church, or out of church. They hit a point and they just become just still. And what's going to help you is that you begin to view the church as like a life support, like something that is far more than just something we come to every week. It is very, very critical to being in service and being faithful and opening yourself up to ministry and being available and being in church is incredibly important.
Very good. So I will say it's going on 4 months, right? That you've been door director.
Yeah, not a year.
I don't know how long.
Not 2019.
Not 2019. Sorry, guys.
I hadn't even thought of that. It's 4 months.
So it's been 4 months, and in that short time, you've done everything under the sun. You've taken over. You've already preached a couple sermons. You've already done soundboard multiple times. You've taken over concerts. You've led outreaches. So I just wanted to add that is something for the men to see, that is very inspirational, and that is a good exampleship at its finest, I would say. So on behalf of the men in the church, we just want to let you know that we appreciate you and for everything that you do, because being a door director is not an easy thing. I've only seen one door director since I've been here. I think
Jerry.
I think so.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And after that, I think even your dad took over duties for a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, I could.
Was that here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not in this building.
Yeah, I was in the other building.
And I could see how difficult it was. I use your dad sometimes, like when I would go to outreaches and people wouldn't show up, I just remember your dad having to deal with that. And I'm like, if he dealt with that, I can deal with that. You know, I'm here to outreach. I'll do outreach even if nobody's there.
Yeah.
So that's a form of exampleship. It must run down the line of Bonilla's. So again, thank you for doing what you do.
It was something else. I've been, because you brought that up. Man, I don't think I know or understand fully what it's like to have nobody, because man, the people, like you run the concerts, there's always people outreaching, everyone kind of mans their post, does their ministry. It's not really like I'm doing a whole lot, you know what I mean? We call an outreach and half the church is there, and it's like, you know, God's moving, man, and I'm just a very, 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 very small part of that. What's going on is everyone that's doing something. It's all an extension of what Pastor Gordon's leadership and Liz and her exampleship and his exampleship. And like I said, if I am doing anything good besides God's grace and mercy, it's because Pastor Gordon has taken the time to help me through a ton of things.
Yeah,
that's the main thing, right? Is that you've now have met a man who can tell you his life is not a life that he would say model after me, but seeing him now, we can know that wow, there's something there that we can only get from serving God, because that's what he's telling us. Right. And that's the biggest thing, is that a lot of people don't realize that. They think that people in church or people who are faithful because they themselves are doing it. But it's not always that way. It's the way that God's grace falls on you and you remember who you were, and you're like, man, I'm glad that I'm not that person anymore. And that's why we can always come to God and be like, okay, God, what do you want to do with me?
Right.
All right. I think we are good here. We would, of course, like to thank Mr. Rudy Bonilla here for sharing his life. No longer vague testimonies with us. Now we know everything.
Yeah, mostly everything.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Is like we filled in a little bit of the color, but there's so much there that he left out too. I'm sure.
Nonetheless, thank you
for good reason though.
Nonetheless, thank you for coming on. I know there was a bit of. So you were actually. I mean, we keep going back into it. You were actually supposed to be the third host here until you became the door director.
Where did that come from?
Y'all talked about the podcast.
But I don't think I ever said like I'm gonna be the host. I was like, that's a good idea.
So what the conversation was, we're at my house and I was explaining something going on, right? And I was like, oh yeah, this and that. And Rudy's only remark was, you ever thought about doing a podcast? So like, I've always wanted to, but I never knew what to talk about. He's like, man, you give out enough information that it seems like you could do a podcast. And I was all like,
you and Sam are perfect for podcast.
I always say I just inserted myself into this.
And I appreciate that.
But yeah, again, thank you for coming on. Even though it took a minute here, I think you had to see Mark's for you to make a decision.
Yeah, I had to make sure that,
that it was Rudy approved.
That he, came out alive and stuff. But yeah, it was really good when I watched it. So I was like, okay. And it's not like it was because of him. I was gonna do it. I just was real hesitant on doing. I don't know.
He's antisocial, remember?
Yeah, I was like, you know.
God's stretching him like all of us.
Yeah, maybe Pastor won't let this one on. I'll be fine with that.
We'll see. He'll look
It'll
and be
just
like,
be our
an
conversation.
hour 20 minutes now.
Oh wow.
You thought you weren't going to talk a lot.
You have any more questions?
Now you want to talk.
He's all, let's
Might
keep
as
this,
well.
let's keep this going. So that's good to hear, because then we'll have you back on.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we have
right.
we have topics to discuss.
Yes.
So that which is our plan. So
Yeah.
So it more than likely will be a lot of testimonies, but we do intend on talking on topics as well. So when we do, we will probably have guests like Rudy back, Mark back, whoever else will join us.
You can even get another mic, so you got room for one more and do
Well,
four people.
I mean, that's just four inputs there. So
Mhm.
yeah, and we can grab a mic off the stage if the sound guys
No, you
can
can't.
set it up right. We don't want it to be
Wow. I'm not a sound guy anymore.
So again, thank you very much for watching. Again, thank you, Rudy Bonilla, for joining us for the Day After podcast. My name is Sam,
I'm Josh.
and we will see you again the day after.